Yo, what's up, dear subscriber? Welcome to a new episode on your channel, Nova Briefcase. The dollar. The green. It's arguably the most significant achievement in modern financial history. A piece of paper that's got some serious clout and is looked at with value and respect. It's basically the OG of currency. James Grant, an editor at The Economist, totally nailed it when he said it's the Coca-Cola of money brands. So, dear beautiful subscriber, allow me to ask and answer these questions. Why is every country so obsessed with tracking the dollar's every move in currency markets like Forex and even in sketchy spots like the black market? And why is the dollar the go-to global reserve currency? So, the dollar, as everyone knows, is the official currency of the United States of America. It's been around since 1792, right after they signed that Constitution thing, and now it's like the strongest currency in the world. But it didn't just get there overnight. It was a journey, a wild ride. This journey was packed with major events, and the real star of this story is something called the Federal Reserve, or just the Fed. It is a federal government agency. What does it do? It kind of performs the same function as the central banks. It's basically the brains behind the most important currency in the world. You might be thinking, okay, I want to know the story of this Fed. Well, I'm about to spill the tea. The Fed has this super complicated system that's totally different from other central banks, and honestly, it's hard for a lot of people to wrap their heads around it. That's why it's a hot topic for all sorts of conspiracy theories, like it being owned by the Rothschild family, or run by some secret Supreme Council of the world. Crazy stuff like that. To try and get a handle on the Fed's financial system and how dollars get issued in America, we need to take a little trip back in time and see what the financial system in the US was like before the Fed even existed. Dear subscriber, back in the 19th century, America was like totally messed up and things were pretty bad. Why? Well, there was this super bloody civil war, probably the deadliest war in American history in terms of soldier losses. So you can imagine the catastrophic impact on the economy. But even after things calmed down a bit, the US kept crashing and falling into economic recessions every now and then. Other countries had central banks to bail them out during these economic crises, but America was like, nope, no central bank for us. You're probably wondering why, right? Why didn't America have a central bank? Well, my awesome subscriber, I hope you are aware that the idea of a central bank overseeing a country's currency was relatively new back then. The first one was actually created by the Dutch in 1609, and guess what? It totally boosted their economy and made them a huge deal back in the day. The English were like, hey, let's try this central bank thing. And they made the Bank of England in 1694. And guess what? It also helped improve their economic situation, which led to the expansion of the Great British Empire. You might say, so, central banks are a great idea and countries succeed because of them. Why didn't America do it sooner? Patience, dear subscriber. America was still a baby country and had just come out of a war with Britain. So excuse them if their first idea wasn't to copy the English. But after facing a bunch of economic problems, they realized they actually needed a government entity to manage the country's monetary policy. So, this guy named Alexander Hamilton was like, let's try this type of central bank thing in America. In what year? That was way back in 1791. Did it work out? Unfortunately, it totally flopped. They tried again in 1816, and, well, that didn't work either. Can you believe it? What's going on? It couldn't last more than a few years before it failed. And that's because it couldn't bring stability to America's economic situation. Why? For a very simple reason. People used to think that if the banks where they kept their money went bankrupt, they would never get their money back. You go the next day to withdraw your cash and they tell you, sorry sir, we're out of business. And you're like, what do you mean? I trusted you with my money. With all this tension, any rumor that a bank might go under would make all their customers rush in to withdraw their money. Of course, banks don't keep all the money just sitting there. They invest it and give out loans to make profits and pay interest to their customers. So when everyone suddenly wanted their money back, there wasn't enough amount on hand, and boom, the bank would declare bankruptcy because they had nothing else to do. This happened a lot and caused many banks to go bankrupt, even if they were doing well financially. This is exactly what happened in 1857 and 1873 and 1884 and 1890 and 1893 and 1896. Dear subscriber, in each of these years, people, driven by fear, decided to rush to the banks and withdraw all their money, fearing the banks would collapse. This phenomenon is called a bank run, and because of this, banks actually did go bankrupt. A self-fulfilling prophecy. And every time this happened, it resulted in a severe economic crisis and recession throughout the country. So the economic situation was really bad. Until 1907, when this huge banking panic happened out of nowhere, the American stock market crashed and lost about half of its value. Like, what on earth happened? More than 10 banks on the East Coast went bankrupt all at once. People were freaking out, rushing to withdraw their money from the banks, terrified of losing their life savings. The banks were so scared, like, oh my gosh, what do we do? What do we do? So they went to this super rich and powerful guy. Who was this dude? JP Morgan. JP Morgan was basically the king of Wall Street and owned a bank with his name on it, JP Morgan, which is one of the biggest, or perhaps the #1 bank in America at the present time. So, in October 1907, JP Morgan called together the heads of the biggest banks in America at that time. He was like, we need to meet and figure out what to do to fix this crisis. They actually got together and were like, you know what? We really need a central bank in this country. This is crazy. It's a must. We don't want these financial disasters to happen again. So, Congress gave the green light and decided to draft a bill to establish one. And from there, everyone started looking out for their own interests. For example, the southern states were worried that the central bank would give more power to Washington and Wall Street over them, since all the money was there. Meanwhile, the banks wanted to make sure the central bank wouldn't be manipulated by politicians. They wanted it to be something independent of the government. Keep those Washington folks away from it. And so they went back and forth for about 5 years. Yes, 5 years of discussions and debates trying to figure out what the structure of this central bank was going to look like. But they finally reached an agreement. These meetings among the big bankers were super low-key, not officially supervised by the US government. They actually took place on a well-known island called Jekyll Island in Georgia. It was an exclusive club for the wealthy VIPs with big names like JP Morgan, Henry Davison, Frank Vanderlip, and Paul Warburg, huge names in the world of capital. These were all private bank owners discussing the creation of a central bank for the country. Basically, capitalism told the government to step aside like, this is our business, don't get involved, and that's exactly what happened. So, in 1913, after all these negotiations and discussions wrapped up, they created the Fed. The Federal Reserve is made up of 12 regional banks in different states. Each bank is owned by bankers and business people from the same state. But to avoid upsetting the government and to show that we're not doing anything shady, we decided that the Fed would have a board of governors with 7 members, all picked by the president, the head of state. Like, yeah, we created it, but you, government, get to oversee it. Are you happy now? Okay. To make things even sweeter, the Senate has to approve those 7 members. So, what have we done just now? We've got to deal with the politicians. Anyway, we set up this Federal Reserve to support banks when needed, and to also help out the government. What? Why? What's up with the government? Well, dear subscriber, if there's another crisis in the country, it won't just affect the government. It'll hit the economy, the banks. The whole shebang will be in a tough spot. So here's how the scenario plays out. The government might need money and picks up the phone like, hey, we need some dollars. And the Fed goes, no problem, we got you. Then the Fed calls the Treasury, which is in charge of the printing presses, and says, hey Treasury, we need money. Print it. The Treasury does its thing and sends it to the Federal Reserve, which then lends it to the government. Wait a minute, what did you just say? The Federal Reserve loans money to the US government? Yes, dear subscriber. And not only that, but they charge interest on it too. So basically, it's like, hey government of the most powerful country in the world, if you don't pay us back plus interest, we're gonna take action. Whatever that even means. I mean honestly, dear subscriber, I have no idea what those actions are or how they would even carry them out. And I'm sure you're a bit confused, wondering how this institution has all this power and all these responsibilities. Not gonna lie, it's complicated. Not easy at all. But what I want you to understand is that they're the ones who oversee the printing of paper currency and the minting of coins. But it's not like they can just press the print button whenever they want, without any oversight, like, oh, we're in trouble, let's print some more. Nope, there has to be a gold reserve to back it up. This is to prevent inflation, like what happened once in Germany, and also in Zimbabwe, where those governments went wild with the printing. The rule was that our currency had to be backed by gold. The Fed actually did this. They only printed dollars if there was enough gold to cover them. Notice I used the past tense. We'll get to that in a bit. So basically, the US economy really improved a lot during World War I. Even major powers started borrowing money from us. Like who? Like Britain. The same country we were always trying to distinguish ourselves from. Yep, now we're the ones lending them money. Started from the bottom, now we're here. The dollar started gaining strength, and this became even more apparent during World War II. America's economy was booming, and its military was in a comfortable situation. While Europe was drowning in the nightmare of Nazism, we were chilling on our own continent far from all that drama, getting stronger and stronger. France and Britain had to print their money without gold reserves to fund their war efforts and survive the destruction. They were also begging America for loans, which was enjoying sitting on its gold, dollars, and nukes. And here, America saw a golden opportunity to reach the top. Let's make America great. This was before there was an again. So, as World War II was nearing its end in 1944, about 730 delegates from around the world from 44 allied countries were invited by America to a place called Bretton Woods in New Hampshire. Why? To agree on the shape of the new global economic system after the war. Like, we're about to defeat Hitler. What do we do next? Just sit around doing nothing? No way. We need to agree on something, darling. And so the Bretton Woods Agreement was signed, and they came to an understanding on 3 main points. First, they created the International Monetary Fund, IMF, which is supposed to lend money to member countries. So you're a country that needs funds? No problem. But there's a catch. They impose measures and monitor certain reforms, such as austerity measures. Some might view this as meddling in a country's internal affairs, but that's the IMF's system. If you don't like these conditions, don't borrow. Second, they established the World Bank. It is designed to help rebuild and develop the allied countries that were damaged by the war. Third, and most importantly, they made the dollar the alternative to gold as the world's primary currency. America had 2/3 of the world's gold reserves. That's a lot of bling. This allowed it to push the dollar onto the world. Of course, someone might say, but how? Britain, the Great, France. They just stayed silent. Yep, they did. We just came out of a war, and the mini mustache guy gave us a hard time and wrecked us. France was occupied by Germany. They wouldn't dare to argue, and both of them owed huge debts to America. Plus, they were printing their currencies like crazy, causing massive inflation, and their gold reserves were low. So, whatever America said, they had to go along with it and couldn't say a thing. And yeah, everyone agreed that countries should start holding dollars instead of gold. Basically, if a country wanted to print its currency, it had to have dollars to back it up, not gold. The gold was in America. Any country with dollars could go to America and swap them for gold, or vice versa. An ounce of gold was set at around $35. Oh my. Now its price has skyrocketed several times thanks to Richard Nixon. Someone might say, but this way, America could manipulate the system and print as many dollars as they want. My dear subscriber, the Fed's job is to stick to printing a specific amount of dollars that matches the gold available. No more, no less. That paper currency has a real value in gold. And indeed, countries started using the dollar as a global currency for this new world economic system. For everything, international customs, global stock markets, foreign trade, oil, you name it. Any country wanting to import or export anything from another country used dollars, not their local currencies. I don't care about your francs or pounds, I want that American greenback. And this made the American economy thrive even more, allowing it to ascend to the throne of the world's economies. Then suddenly, in 1965, French President Charles de Gaulle asked America to exchange a shipment of dollars for gold. However, the Americans asked to postpone it because they were preoccupied with the Vietnam War. But in 1971, after multiple requests from different countries and America could no longer dodge them, President Richard Nixon appeared on TV and said, "Sorry folks, we've been kind of printing money without backing it up with gold for a while now, because we desperately needed them for Vietnam War expenses. And now we can't repeg the dollar to gold. Sorry about that." This became known as the Nixon shock. It left the world in confusion. What about our agreements we made in the forest? What the heck? You tricked us. Ironically, dear subscriber, despite all those expenses, America did not even win the war. The US breaching the Bretton Woods Agreement was a serious matter. Imagine waking up one morning and thinking, I need some gas or food or a PlayStation, so you just print dollars and buy whatever you want. You want oil and equipment, print and buy. America was getting valuable stuff and giving out worthless paper in return. Faced with this situation, countries found themselves having to accept the reality. They didn't want to start from scratch and rebuild a whole new global economic system all over again. Their economies were already relying on the dollar. What were they going to do with all those dollars they had? Just throw them away? Plus, the American market is the largest, producing and consuming everything, and everyone deals with it. The only option was to trust America and its policies to manage printing dollars without a gold reserve in a responsible and sensible manner. It's a toxic relationship, but it's based on trust. Trust in the Federal Reserve, which had previously cheated on them and failed to keep its commitments. Some countries adopted what is called a rate anchor, tying their currency to the dollar at a fixed exchange rate like the Gulf Arab countries, to maintain the value of their local currencies and facilitate the sale of oil. But some countries decided to escape the dollar trap and look for another currency backed by gold. The European Union created the euro, which took a share of reserves from several countries alongside the pound sterling, Swiss franc, Japanese yen, and others. However, the US dollar still holds the lion's share of global reserves. Attempts to punish America, like those by BRICS, continue, and the US keeps printing money at every opportunity, as it did to counter the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, increasing the money supply. Yet the dollar remains strong and influential due to the powerful US economy backing it, and the situation persists, with no defined end in sight. Or does it? The only thing that hasn't increased is the number of subscribers to this channel, so please support us by subscribing, hitting the like button, and leaving a comment to help us grow stronger. This was Nova, signing off. Peace out.